My name is Todd Creager, and what I do is I help couples heal from infidelity and other such crises. I help couples rekindle passion, and I help individuals heal from trauma using EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a phenomenal, well-researched, evidence-based approach to help people heal quickly. And I use it when I'm dealing with infidelity too, which is a topic that I'll be talking about today. So today, what I want to do, and I've done this before, is I want to talk about a successful couple who healed from infidelity. And this is my 2020 version, because this is a recent couple, and here we are in the year 2020. Now this couple is a couple who, let me start talking about him. He came from a family where he was very criticized by his father. Never could do enough. Never could be good enough. Everything was focused on the negative. And the father had a big impact on his life. So he became very hypersensitive to criticism. And then you have the person he married, his wife. In her family, her father, she didn't really have a biological father much more than when she was like 2 years old. Her mom got married to the stepfather. The stepfather molested her brother, and there was a lot of shame. This shame permeated the family. And the mom is still with the stepfather. So it never was really resolved, and there was always that embarrassment and shame. And it kind of continued with her through elementary school, middle school, even high school, where she didn't have a whole lot of friends. She had a few here and there. She wouldn't have them come over to the house. She was just run by this emotion of shame because she learned it in her family. This is hiding. This is what happens. So you have this woman who is run by shame. You have this man who's tremendously afraid of not being good enough. Okay, so that's their family history. So now what happens? So they find each other. They get married. Everything seems fine in the beginning, but as oftentimes happens, the issues do come up. And when they came up big. Of course, I get on the scene as their therapist years later, but I can only imagine she probably had this feeling of shame that had not been dealt with, and he probably said something or did something that brought up that shame, and her walls came up. He sees the walls not as she's trying to protect herself, because people don't do it that way. They take it personally, right? So he ends up feeling criticized and feeling judged and feeling attacked, just like he did as a little boy with his father. And this is what happens with couples. Whether there's infidelity, which I'll get to in a minute, or not, there's this wounded child dance that happens with couples where you trigger my wounded child, and the way that wounded child part of me reacts triggers your wounded child. Here she is, every time she gets triggered, her wall goes up, her wall of shame goes up, because I don't want you to be feeling like I'm a bad person. And every time he feels judged or not good enough, in a way his wall goes up. He would sometimes get angrier and fight, but sometimes he'd close down, she'd close down more than anything. And you have that wounded boy part getting triggered. And when that wounded boy part gets triggered, what does he mainly do? If he's not getting angrier and angrier at her, he withdraws. He withdraws or gets angry at her. What happens to her? She feels more shame. She feels shame. Her wall goes up. And that's what happens. That's the downward spiral of almost every couple that goes through a downward spiral, which is really true for many couples. It's the story of their lives. In a way, the way I look at marriage is a great way to bring up your wounded stuff so you can work on it. So not only when you work on it are you healing your marriage, but you're healing yourself from the past. So this man now, the husband and wife are going through this wounded child dance, as I call it. And then he goes to work one day. There's a coworker. This coworker compliments him, gives him a compliment. He likes it. It feels good. She's not a danger to him. She hasn't occupied in his psyche the same place as his wife, which his wife occupies sort of like the place of the father that judged him all the time. This is a new person, doesn't occupy that part of his psyche, and compliments him. He likes it. They meet more and more. Slippery slope. They end up having an affair. It's like a 9-month affair. It's not a short affair. His wife discovers it. They come to see me. This is typically the kind of thing that'll happen. It won't be exactly that story, but some variation of it. How do they heal? Because they did. How did they become such a phenomenal couple? Well, for one, they came to see me. And when you see someone, it's really difficult to do this alone. As you can see, I mean, it's so easy to just keep continuing the dance. Even when somebody says, I'll never cheat again, that's only 1/10 of the problem. The other 9/10 aren't dealt with. You still have to deal with the underlying issues. So they come to see me, and we have an opportunity now to deal with some of those issues. He starts to recognize the pattern. He starts to see how his automatic knee-jerk reaction to his wife's wall was taking it personally and feeling attacked, and then withdrawing, sometimes yelling, but oftentimes withdrawing. And then she gets more and more within herself, this shame that she gets more and more depressed, more and more cut off, and of course, she's not complimenting him. She's too busy protecting her own self. And this is what happens with couples, is they just protect themselves and it messes things up. But here in therapy, they start to recognize how they protect themselves. They start to develop, with my assistance and my guidance, some much better communication techniques. They find that rather than doing the automatic defensive mechanisms that they did before, that they're able to endure some of their anxiety and stay connected and stay open and begin to listen and be emotionally present for each other in the pain, even talking about the pain of the infidelity, which is typically exactly where you got to start, because that's what's going on. And so he's feeling guilt about the infidelity. She's feeling devastated about the infidelity and inadequate. But they start talking about it. They're there for each other. They start to have some presence with each other. That's the step. They connect. And once they keep on connecting, then I encourage them to begin being more playful with each other. Even in my office, I had them sing together. That might seem kind of silly, but it's really not, because singing together or dancing together is a way of being vulnerable. Being playful with each other is vulnerable, and they had stopped being vulnerable a long time ago. Now, in addition, as I mentioned in the very beginning of this video, I did EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing on both people. They came in individually, and I helped him heal so that that wounded child part was able to heal from his dad and not feeling good enough, as well as from his wife and not feeling good enough, and recognizing that he isn't a little boy. He was able to connect with that adult part that isn't in trouble when his wife's upset. At the same time, I worked, not at the same time, but at a different session, I worked with her to heal from the shame from that little girl that had to hide, and to connect with those parts of her that know she's okay. And she doesn't have to hide. There's nothing to hide. And she was able to develop that. And then we also would then bring them back together. And it got easier for them to sing together, to dance together. And ultimately, we worked with them sexually. They did a lot of sexual avoidance for their different reasons. Her shame, his feeling attacked and inadequate, but we were able to continue, and they continued with courage, with my assistance, with my encouragement. They started to validate each other's fears, but also validate each other's desires. And suddenly their sex life became very interesting. Their whole marriage became interesting. It became interesting as they became more courageous and became more vulnerable, and with a deeper understanding of each other's wounded parts, but also recognized they have these healthy adult parts. They were able to really become what I would call a full-bodied couple. And they were able to be there for each other and listen to each other, and as well as stimulate each other. So this is a successful couple, very healed, very happy. Their relationships are not only better with each other, but they were able to be much more differentiated from their dysfunctional families of origin. So that helped as well. And it goes down to the children. I mean, everybody benefits when the couple grows in awareness and grows in connection. Great story. I loved working with this couple. There are thousands of couples I've worked with just like that. If you know someone, or if you are in a situation like that, that could be your story too, with a happy ending. Oh, before I forget, also, if you press on that button, there's 10 steps to healing from infidelity. Highly worth it. I highly recommend you press on that. Okay, I wish you well. Take care. This is Todd Creager.